And Donald Trump, he hit the roof today. He warned Hamas, the terrorist group in Gaza, release your remaining Jewish hostages by Saturday or else.
If all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
But the Hamas terrorist group had in fact just said it would delay the release of more of the hostages. Still got 73 of them, although half are believed dead. Its excuse, it claims Israel has broken its agreement on how much aid would be led into Gaza, among other things. But is that the real story for this delay? You see, Donald Trump has seen the same pictures that I showed you last night of the last 3 hostages released by Hamas. How traumatised and thin and beaten they'd looked, starved, as you can see from comparing how they look now to how they looked when they were kidnapped 16 months ago. An Israeli doctor said they've been deliberately starved and tortured, and Trump said today, this is why Hamas could not afford to release any more hostages.
I looked at the hostages that came in, and they're emaciated. It looked like something out of the 1930s. It's an absolute disgrace. It looked like it was a concentration camp, which essentially it was. It looks like they came out of the Holocaust. What you see is probably the best, because they want to send people that look at least healthy. And that's not healthy. These people have been badly hurt.
Joining me from Jerusalem is Mark Sofer, who was Israel's ambassador to Australia and also to India. Mark, great to see you again. Thanks so much for your time. Very grateful. Is Donald Trump right that Hamas has gone cold on releasing more hostages after seeing the shock around the world about the condition of the last 3 it released? People it clearly brutalised, starved and tortured.
Well, it's possible, but I'm not so sure, to be honest. I think that Hamas as a terrorist organization, as a group of killers, rapists, murderers, it doesn't go cold, it doesn't get shock on very much of that, or how the international arena plays out. I think had they really wanted, or should they really want a major crisis of such proportions right now, they wouldn't have announced the cessation of the release of hostages 5 days before the next round is supposed to be released. They're probably more likely, or certainly possible to take into account, that they just want to improve their negotiation position as we move into round 2. These are a group of bestial murderers, let's not forget, and I don't think that they have thoughts of international shock and issues such of that nature.
Well, Mark, does that leave the other excuse then? Is that right, that Hamas says it's delaying further releases because Israel hasn't let in all the aid it had promised? Personally, I think it's really weird, strange, how Hamas starts a war but says it's its enemy's responsibility to feed its people in the meantime. But is this complaint true?
Well, I don't use an expletive deleted on your show, but it's absolute and utter rubbish. Every single part of the aid which was agreed upon has gone in. That's not the reason at all. That's just what they're throwing out into the international arena. I think that they're counting to a large extent on the shock in Israel to exact more concessions. They were looking at the emaciated condition of the hostages that were released last Saturday. And it's very likely that the ones that will be coming out later will be even in worse conditions, those that are not, of course, in body bags, sadly. I also think, Andrew, that these are cynical killers, and they just want to prolong psychological terror of the people of Israel, but more especially of the families. It's just a how to cause as much damage as possible. And I don't, it's certainly nothing to do with the aid that's going in. And nobody really wants to see uninvolved Gazans starving. I don't think that's in Israel's interest. I don't think it's anybody's interest. It's not a humanitarian interest. But of course, it's not the reason and I don't think we should take Hamas words for anything but for the trash it is.
Now, I would also say that Hamas is keen to project strength over Israel to the people of Gaza to re-establish its control. I think that's also a factor here. Look, Trump said today, all hell is going to break loose, Mark Sofer, if the remaining hostages are not released by noon on Saturday. He did add the caveat that depended on whether Israel agreed. Why that caveat, and what is the Israeli government likely to say?
Well, the cabinet is sitting right now to discuss the latest ploy, the cynical ploy of Hamas, and there are a number of options. One of them is return to the hostilities, immediate return to hostilities, but there are other possibilities, such as the closing of what's called the Netzarim corridor, which is the main corridor connecting south and into Gaza. And, of course, the cessation of movement of Palestinians from South to North Gaza, etc. So it's a number of different possibilities on the order of the day. But there is also, and I think we have to remember this, enormous pressure inside of Israel. And this is now facing the government. It's making its deliberations to move towards stage 2 of the negotiations, especially after seeing the emaciated conditions of the hostages. And what we are likely to see will be even worse as we move down the line. And I think that this is compounded, Andrew, to a certain extent by irresponsible statements by many of the extremists, some of the extremists in Israel, including in the government, who have said openly that they are not interested in stage 2. And all of this is a very complex situation, is now coming together. And so Hamas is playing into all of this situation, and the government now has to make the decision. Where do we go? Where does it go from here? Do we go back to the conflict situation? Do we do everything still possible to get the hostages out? There's internal politics at play. There's external politics at play. And let's never forget, at the end of the day, we are facing not Australia, not Europe, not the United States, but a group of cynical, bestial creatures called Hamas, who think nothing about mass murder and killing and celebrate death.
Yes, and in fact, they've publicly said they look forward to doing what they did on October 7 again and again and again. That's one of their top officials. Mark Sofer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.